All right. It is 6 o'clock, so I'll call to order the September 26, 2024 meeting of the Lake Limit Conservancy District Board of Directors. We will begin with public comments. So if there's any members of the public that would wish to make comments tonight, please feel free to do so. Name and 3 minutes, please.
Sarah Gail Tala, go by Gail at the lake, and District 5. I live across the street from the porthole. I have four houses in the Lake Conservancy. And so it's turning off my phone. Yesterday I decided I decided to look up an old issue and I got a lot of information. And that's about the wake boats. Wisconsin is doing a lot of research on it. And there's several states that have outlawed them in certain places: Oregon, Georgia, Ohio, and Vermont. And they've outlawed them in places that are bigger than us. Now, the problems with the wake boats, not just that they're irritating, and that they also sometimes let their wake go at night when they're just buzzing around, even though there's nobody surfing on them. I think one of the two worst things for us is it says if it's less than 15 feet deep, it's really bad for the sediment underneath. And when it stirs up the sediment, it also stirs up fish eggs, and everybody likes to fish at the lake. So we're hurting fish eggs, we're hurting the sediment when we're pumping it out one way and the wake boats are bringing it up the other way. Also aquatic plants, birds. Wisconsin has had severe damage to their shoreline, and that was in a lake that was like 30 feet deep. They said 200 feet from the shoreline or from any boat dock is what's recommended. And I'm not sure how our buoys aren't 200 feet out. They'll make 100 feet.
They're right about, we try to shoot for 200.
We do.
But yeah.
I grew up at a lake that only allowed electric motors. I have a pontoon boat with a 20 horsepower electric outboard motor. And I just think the gas motors going that fast, especially, I think gas motors are a problem, period, but we're not going to get rid of them. But I really think that we need to start thinking about the wake boats, especially since the study says that if you're less than 15 feet deep, then you are doing damage. And I think there's only a few spots on the lake that are even good. They can go in circles in that spot and not come over on the rest of the lake. I've also been on a pontoon boat that was almost tipped over by a wake boat coming too close. So I know you're busy now, but I'd really like to get this on the agenda sometime. Thank you.
Any other members of the public wishing to talk tonight? And I asked to keep comments to 3 minutes or less, so I'll give you
I do my best. My name's Michael Kafori, District 6, North Shore Drive. This is for you, Mr. Quincy. I have some question. Is there any reason that freeholders can't see the 2 dredging contracts?
Those are public records, so there's no reason you can't have it.
Okay, Adam, we had requested those. Could we get those? We sent you a note on September 10th.
We'll check that. Did not see that. I'll get that too.
Thank you. Concern. Last month, Ms. Laderman, you suggested that the board review priorities. This was in response to stunning information about silt buildup recently and was in context of expenditures, park versus sediment. And I thought it was excellent. Mr. Quincy said you'd heard from a few of your constituents concerning about the sediment, and Dr. Pretty had heard from his as well. So I'm asking rhetorically, why, when each board member represents a district, does each of you not know what your constituents are thinking regarding this? It's an extraordinarily important financial prioritization issue as to where we spend our money. So
I guess I'm not sure of the statement or the question.
the question is, we continue to talk about things like bathrooms and those type things versus sediment removal. We heard last meeting that there's sediment coming in at a tremendous rate into the lake, at a rate faster than what was taken out this year. That's going to be the case. The lake doesn't have a future. So the question is prioritization of funds. Okay. Another concern, dredging didn't get even through one shoreline sweep of the East Bay. And given that we had previously been told what we had previously been told, this is not a great success from our perspective. It was indicated in the last meeting and in the update that it was. In that regard, reference had been made to the East Bay as a channel versus a bay. That apparently was antiquated 18-year-old operational language from an old mechanical dredging map. And I see no official reference to it as a channel versus a bay. And if there is, I'd like to have that. If not, then it's a bay, and we'd appreciate it being treated as such. There are 24 homes back there, almost 10% of the homes of the properties that are on the lake. And to not even get a channel completed is a real concern for us. As a clarification, we heard from many sources that there are those who say, well, they knew it was shallow back there and they bought there anyway. And we just want to clarify that that's incorrect. I'll only speak for us. We'd intended to buy property up north. I was still working full time. So we decided I didn't want to drive 4 or 5 hours every Sunday to come home. So we bought at Lake Lemon in 2015. We have a fine house, had great views, had water shore to shore. And we did make an inquiry as to whether or not the bay would be managed, maintained, and dredged. And we're told, yes, it would. So we just want to make sure that that's clarified. And finally, on grants, we have a question as to what has been done in the last year investigating and obtaining grants. Just 5 minutes of research that was done. We found grants from Clean Water Indiana through ISDA, grant obviously from DNR, Fish and Wildlife Lair grants. Just curious as to what other work is being done, or is there work being done to pursue additional grants?
We're no longer eligible for LAR grants. We've received the
For
maximum amount.
any other grants at all?
For Lair grants, we are working on the Bean Blossom Watershed Steering Committee, which is the best chance of getting grants. Those are for funds to hit the watershed to try to reduce the amount of sedimentation driving through Bean Blossom corridor. But as far as grants for dredging, we capped out at Lair. We've talked about removing that. We did apply for
We
Lair.
applied for the Lair grant this past year and we did not receive
Yeah,
funding.
So it would be a potential. I mean, we're not precluded from having.
No, we'll continue to try.
Don't foresee us not applying
Yeah,
ever.
okay. All right,
There's a usual amount of those grants, just out of curiosity.
I think we applied for the 20% match that we would have been eligible, and I told them that that's what we would, in the rosiest scenario, like, which was, I think, 20% of their total grant funding. I can't remember exactly, but they had $1 million or $1.5 million to divvy up between a number of applicants.
Then we did receive 350,000 in grants, and they started the dredging operations in 2006. And they put a cap on it for a while.
For a long
so,
time, so they just recently released it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good while ago.
Couple $100,000 when we need millions. I mean, it's not nothing, don't
Yeah,
get me
it
wrong.
all,
but
all adds up, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other members of the comment wishing to speak?
Question, oh, sorry, go ahead. If you, I can wait.
I'll take 1 second.
all right.
Oh, if I can talk from here, that'd be fine. Just a follow-up.
Actually, we asked you
Yeah,
to please
okay,
come to
that's
the podium.
You're on Zoom.
It's all recorded.
Cynthia Excafori, section 6. Regarding what my husband was just talking about with the grants. I'm unclear about the Bean Blossom. Who initiated that? Whose name is, who's applying for that grant?
It is the Bean Blossom Watershed Steering Committee, and it has people from IDEM, DNR, Lake Lemon, Monroe County, different consultants. It's a big multi-unit thing. We actually did this back in 2009 to 12 as well, and we got a couple $100,000 on the ground during that.
Yeah, I remember that there was some grant money in the past.
Yeah.
The SWCD was the applicant for the grant. through
Who was it?
The SWCD, the Soil and Water Conservation
Okay.
District up in Monroe County.
So that's basically for the creek. And when do you get notified on that?
We are a member of that. Right now, they're working on redoing the Bean Blossom Watershed Management Plan. So once that plan
Okay,
gets
so if they
finalized-
have a grant, they're applying for a
No,
grant.
the way it works is they apply to the state to get monitoring on the watershed. So that's from the White River
I
in
see.
Steinsville all the way up
Okay,
to Bean
and that's
Blossom.
what you're asking for, the monitoring function.
They are doing that.
Got it.
Once they get the monitoring done, then it opens up 319 funds, which
Okay.
can be used in the watershed
Cool.
for
And may I ask-
non-point source pollution prevention projects.
Okay, and how much is that grant for, do you know?
It's not a single grant.
I see.
It's individual landowners can
I see.
apply.
Oh,
So if you were a livestock owner, you could apply for
I
high-use
understand, yeah, I
pads,
did read about those. What about the Clean Water Indiana, what they seem to be doling out money? And let me ask a bigger question. Is there anybody on the board that is tasked with, or have you tasked one of your staff during downtime? It seems as though there must be a substantial amount of downtime in the winter. And do I understand correctly, there are 2 full-time staff?
Yes.
Yes.
2 full-time staff? Has anybody been tasked, or do you have anybody on the board that is searching for grants? That's free money. These are 2 we found in 5 minutes. I'm just wondering if you have fingers out there, if you are knowledgeable, or if you are interested.
We hired a consultant and worked with them on, fundraising and grant funds and things of that nature. Over the last couple of years, we've done that.
And they didn't come up with
And
anything?
staff is tasked with reviewing grant opportunities. They are involved in different organizations. They have past experiences. So yes, they are constantly looking.
Okay, so what about the
And
Clean Water
I just
Indiana?
want to say
Yeah.
something, because I've done this
Yeah.
myself, made the assumption that there's downtime.
Yeah,
There is not downtime for
Okay.
these guys. It's a small staff and there's so much to do and
Yeah.
all the
But if you
permitting,
find-
everything has taken a lot of time.
If you
Well,
find
thank
new grants, please share them with us and we'll explore those if it's
yeah, I
something that we
appreciate that.
have.
Well, here's one right here, Clean Water Indiana, big opportunity. Thank you for saying that. That is a clarification, because we
Yeah.
have wondered. It does seem as though there would be some downtime on a lake. Okay, thank you. I would hope and encourage all of us, since it does seem to be a dire situation from what I heard in here, listened to the recording last week, this is not a good situation, is my understanding. That more coming in than expected, not a lot leaving. And we love the lake. I'm sure you all do. And again, I'd like to reiterate, it's a little curious to me that everybody doesn't know what their constituents think when sediment is number one. You're taking issue with that, and I don't blame you, but
Well, I don't know why you think that we don't think that we know what our constituents
because last week we
want.
heard 2 people only refer to it.
Huh.
You did refer to it, Mike,
Huh.
and Dr. Pretty referred to it.
Well, I've talked to a lot of my constituents about the funding of this and the saving of the lake and that our best option is.
And I think there was a survey done some time ago. The number one concern was the health of the lake and dredging. But last month, there was a lot of talk about, in fact, you raised the issue yourself about the importance of prioritizing financial concerns. So
I am
there was,
treasurer.
I understand that, thank you. So there's a lot to be done, and I don't know why we aren't seizing every opportunity. And it just seems that we could bring a little bit more life to looking around, talking to people, looking for grants, finding somebody to write grants. And if you're paying a consultant and they're not coming up with things like Clean Water Indiana, I would wonder what the value of the consultant is, just my opinion. Thank you very much.
Any other members wishing to speak tonight?
I have a question.
And if you could go to the podium, please.
Well, I don't know if it'll be under public comment. Roger Edwards, District 4. Seems to be issues with my subleases. Don't know if I need to wait until Debbie does her sublease approvals or if it should be new business at the end.
And we don't add items to the agenda during the meeting, but if there's a specific concern, you're welcome to express it, and then we will.
Now we're at new business.
This is the one and only time to talk regarding general.
Can I fill that in just a little bit? Someone from your district
Yes,
wants a sublease.
yes,
In the spillway area.
Yep.
Adam and I walked the property and looked at a couple of potential sites. We've also had comments at a board meeting, other than my district, about all the stuff that is sitting around there, and I've got pictures and videos, and somehow we've got to clean up that area. So if that's what you're talking about questions, there's a bunch
I
of
wanna know
junk there.
why, in the last few years, yeah, I was called by Adam a week ago yesterday. He was at my dock. He's like, I'm telling you, they're gonna make you get a commercial dock because your boat is setting on your dock. I used to install boats, lifts and docks around this lake. Did it for 10 or 11 years. I've mowed out here for since 1995. I give it to my son 6, 7 years ago. Got one person down there that's causing problems at the very end of our subleases. Adam said I've had complaints. Okay, I want to know who they are, when they were made.
I will just tell you that it's not a good look from the lake. There's a bunch of junk out there.
No, there's
Stuff
not.
that needs to be gotten
That
rid
is
of.
my dock parts for my docks. Adam gave me a deadline this spring to get my stuff in.
Well, I think the board needs to just talk about what we need to do with the subleases.
Oh, so I'm not allowed to have public comment?
You're allowed, but this is not, public comment is not necessarily a give and take. You're
Okay.
welcome to provide some information. You know, if board members wish to respond, that's fine.
Adam says I have floats there. No, they're dock bumpers. Adam gave me a deadline this spring that I had to have my lifts off the shoreline where he was gonna have them moved and I was gonna pay for it.
The lifts that were all along the shoreline over there.
Yeah.
on
What
city
other
property, so.
sublease person in this district or on the whole lake has a deadline to get their stuff in the water?
We don't generally have this issue with other areas around the lake.
I'm the only one that has an issue.
We don't generally have an issue with dock and lifts for other areas around the lake.
Okay,
I can
well,
tell you,
there's,
it's been brought to my attention by multiple freeholders in my district that,
where's your district, sir?
It's across the lake.
yeah, we're across the lake. We're over by, we're next to Riddle Point between there and the rowing,
Between where?
between there and the rowing club.
Okay, over by Lakeview Hills?
Yes, we're
Okay.
the Hills. But I'm just telling you that it's not,
Okay, I understand, but when I was putting in docks, there was lifts that sat on that shore all summer long, they weren't installed. Right down there by all the boathouses,
and
it didn't seem to be an issue then, to anybody.
I'm just saying, you're asking where it's
By
coming.
where Kenny Clark,
You asked a question, you said who's
Okay,
who's
I
filed
understand.
complaints, and I can say that multiple freeholders through me have filed complaints.
over by
From that
where Kenny
district.
Clark used to unload the dredging. There's people there that I installed for, they paid their subleases, they knew they weren't coming down, their stuff sat on their shoreline all summer long. So it seems like I'm being singled out, is the issue here. And I know where a lot of it's coming from.
We're making room. We need to make room for a couple of extra docks and.
Okay, I have two
And
subleases.
it's all, like, there's trash there. You can look at the videos. I took pictures, but we.
And it's like I told Adam, I had a deadline this spring. I have not been back except for the 4th of July. My boat has not been out of that dock all summer. And he said, well, you got your work boat on here. I put my own docks in, but I had a deadline. I couldn't put my configuration in. If there's trash there, I'll go clean it up. I haven't been there. Okay, somebody address me instead of calling and saying, hey, they're gonna make you get a commercial sublease because your boat's sitting on the dock. I'm not out there working. That boat's in my name. It's not in Pop's Docks and Lifts. And everybody knows I'm not out there working. But I'm gonna have to have a commercial dock just because my boat sits there because I put my own stuff in.
I think there's confusion from all the dock pieces up on land and the canopy.
And I told you, I didn't have time to put it in because you gave me a deadline.
And two docks. Well,
And I had to do something, so I got them off the shore.
Sir,
Got
we try to keep this at 3 minutes or less. So
That's what I
think your
said.
point
It's
is-
gonna take more than 3 minutes. But if there's any issues, I want them in writing so I can go over them with my attorney, please.
Any other members of the comment wishing to speak tonight?
Mr. Chairman, what was his name?
Pardon me? Roger Edwards.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Hi, Tina Easton. I think I'm District 5. Okay. Just wanted a few clarifications on the taxes. I know last year at a meeting, one of the meetings I watched, or maybe it was one of the meetings that I attended, Adam made the comment about we cannot tax more than the service that we can provide. Is that correct, Adam?
Our level of taxation is supposed to be continuous with this level of service that we provide, yes.
Okay. So if we collect $1 million in taxes this year, you're gonna provide $1 million in service this year.
Not necessarily.
Not in the
We can
given
have a
year.
plan to be saving money to do another project.
Okay, so if you collect the money for a future plan, if that's
Mm-hmm,
legal,
mm-hmm.
and a person was to have, maybe not be able to afford their home any longer, Mr. Steele's got up and spoke several times about how the taxes are affecting him, and he's forced out of his home. And you do a project, he pays in for 2 years and sells his home in the 3rd year, then he's not gonna get to, and you guys do the project after he sells his house. Or if somebody passes away or whatever. How did they get the service for the taxes they paid forward?
You're looking at a very minute picture, and the way the system works, it's a big picture. So, just because you don't get it this year, collectively, the lake is getting the benefit of it. It's not one person specifically, it's the lake.
No, I'm not saying one person specifically. I am generalizing. I'm just saying there are people that have to sell their homes and leave, and then they paid in taxes that they don't get to see the benefit of. It happens.
That would
It
happen
happens.
anywhere. If you live in a city, I mean, in all places, that is gonna be a possibility or an eventuality. Like if you live in the city and you pay taxes in the city and you move, I mean,
Yeah,
You can
they
make
like
the same
tax
argument.
Affordability questions like this.
I was under the impression that you guys that this was a thing where we had, what we paid in had to be used, like Adam's, I don't know, he's given me the impression that it was a use it or lose it thing.
No.
That you guys had, what you collected had to be used.
No, we've had several meetings with DLGF I participated in my tenure as treasurer, and that is clearly not the case.
That'd be similar to like an item or a DNR that's state funded, or they have like an allocated state budget, but we're our own governmental entity with our own budget, so we kind of set that and then set our thresholds.
Okay, so we know that we have to dredge again because I think in the last meeting you brought up filled in 2 feet down there already in 2 years. Is that what you said?
Yeah, some of the spots, and right by the mouth of the creek there has gotten them.
So at what point do we put a better prevention plan into place before we just continue to just literally tax dollars just thrown at
We
this?
have had substantial studies with the sediment transportation, how to stop that through many engineers. And the biggest issue that we have is on paper, we have a beautiful watershed. We're forested, not much farming, but the soils are just highly erodible. The banks are very steep, we have really flashy rains.
Very fine sediment.
There's nothing to do to prevent it, and all the engineer studies have come back and said, really the only thing that you can do is dredge when you need it, where you need it. And we have an 80 square mile watershed.
I'm not against the dredging, but when you said that in the last meeting that it's filled in that quickly, I'm like,
There's a lot
maybe
of,
we need to come up with another plan.
there's a lot of studies out there, and in the beginning, when I came on the board, we thought, oh, we could use a berm, we could put a beautiful dock along that area on the east end and do all these things, and it's not doable because of the sediment,
That it
and
would
it just
not
wouldn't
work well.
work.
Yeah, but we were looking at opening up some
Channeling.
of those other channels and making
And
channels. We
doing
all
all
took a
that.
boat ride up there that time and,
Yeah,
if the engineering results were, you just got a lot of dirt coming in. It's gonna be like mowing the grass.
The standard
gonna
way of
be-
handling this would be to dig a sediment capture basin.
Yes, I've heard you
And
talk
that
about
would
that.
work well if we had sediment that was typical, like sand, but we don't, it's like dust. And because of that, the capture basin has to be enormous. And so the whole east end of the lake is our capture basin. That's why we have to keep it dredged out. There isn't anything else we can do. I mean, you can't put any kind of barriers across a moving waterway. It's not legal, and it makes good sense why it's not legal. So I mean, we're doing what we can.
No, I'm sure you are. I just keep thinking, should new eyes, fresh look at this. Let's kind of, you know.
Thousands of dollars on studies over time, and they've been going on way before us, way before.
Right,
us.
I know.
This
I'm
is
just
the first
saying, like,
year
it just
that
seems like
it's-
before we just keep throwing tax dollars at this, that we should just keep re-looking at this and be like, okay, here's what we've done, and this is what's happening, you know, what else can we do? I
Nature
mean,
We've come
It's-
massively more efficient this year too, with the
Well, I will
hydraulic
agree
project.
with you on that, sir, very much so. Yes, I would definitely agree. That project that went on this year was much more impressive than the last, for sure.
And to your point, I mean, I know we're saying that we've spent money and we've looked into things, but it's not, we're not at an acceptance. We are still always thinking about it, and any time other opportunities come up, and, you know, I think last year you had mentioned there's some governmental restrictions on what you can do to try to capture as well, and some of that may loosen, which might open up some other opportunities to consider. So it's an ongoing conversation. It's not like it's not like we're at this and this is what it's gonna
This is
be.
what it's gonna
I mean, it may be.
If there's
but
new
we're trying to-
information, yeah, if there's new information, I mean, what we as a board, and I wasn't on the board, you know, when it was formed, but what we understood as a board when we established the Conservancy District is considerably different than what we understand today. And so we're taking that new
Right,
information
but
in
learning
and-
from what we've done, that's where I'm going with this.
Exactly,
You know, because
and-
when he made the comment about 2 feet filled in already, I'm like, okay, that's a lot.
And that wasn't the whole bay, but yeah.
No,
right-
you
right
showed
where
it,
that
I
creek
saw
comes in,
it,
yeah.
I saw it, but I'm
It
just
is-
saying
it's
like,
very
okay,
alarming.
you know, now we know exactly where it's going, you know, let's relook at this again, you know, okay. I don't know, I'm not against the dredging, I'm really not, I just feel like it's just seems like so much money,
Just have a big problem for all the reasons Adam said. We sit, you got Brown County there,
Mhm.
it's all coming in, and when we did those studies, it was like over 100,000 was coming in a year, you know, and so we do have to keep double checking that our investment is working, and that's why we're getting these studies before we
No, I appreciate that.
plan to throw more money at it.
Yeah.
And next year we'll be doing a full lake bathymetric, so measuring the depths across the lake. And then Christopher Burke actually has modeling of our lakes. They can take that data, since the last full lake was in 2019, and they can reassess, you know, how much sediment's coming in, how effective it's gonna be capturing
Where it's set.
in the areas that we're digging at. And so I think next year will be a big learning opportunity once we actually get that and put it in there. So it is evolving.
What is the, remind me, what is the life of a man-made lake before nature takes it back over, isn't it?
It's like 120 years, assuming no maintenance.
And
for
so
lake
we've
living.
had this lake since
53.
71 years, 71 years.
She's her age.
My age, 71, same year, I was born the same year as the lake.
Me too.
Well, I mean, you know, I guess I just look at it as if we were all paying evenly, which we're not, you know, it's based on the value of your home. So I'm paying probably maybe the most of anybody on the
A
entire
fortune.
lake. You know, a fortune,
Right.
yes. So I have a very much so a vested interest in this. And I would like to think that, you know, whenever Adam says, oh, the majority of the people on the lake wanna, you know, keep taxes where they're at. No, they don't.
Yeah.
And I can assure you, Adam, the people that probably voted for that probably live down there where they're feeling like they're feeling the most advantage of it.
Yeah.
And don't pay nearly as much as those of us on the other end of the lake.
That's
So I would
definitely
really
true.
like you guys to keep that in mind. And I don't understand the concept of keeping the taxes at this level. When you're saving for something, or how I save for something, is I put back, you know, a small amount, and have the money when the project. I appreciate that concept. I don't appreciate that. Let's just keep it up here.
But that's exactly what we're doing,
Mhm.
is the saving a little bit here. I know
We
it's
don't
not-
need $1 million next year.
Yeah,
But
Not
we're going
next
to
year.
need for the next dredging project, and if we let the taxes go down, what's gonna happen is you're gonna have a couple of
Maybe
low
people
years.
would like a breather, Michael.
But the reality is, no one's going to like going from.
I was looking
burn rate
forward to that. I was looking forward to that. And I would rather have the money in my account and me being able to, collect some interest off of it instead of you padding your account. That's how I look at it. I mean, I really.
Well, I think Adam's got a good, PowerPoint presentation that we kind of added.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
High level view about,
Well, I appreciate you
What it's
listening
gonna
to me and
take.
letting me vent for a minute.
Well, and as far as flat taxes, I mean, our budgetary restraints are set at the board, so Cordray Sweetwater actually tried to do that. And then it actually resulted in a couple lawsuits, and then the state board of accounts
Tried to do what did they?
tried to do a flat fee.
just to cut everybody, so you got this many free.
So everybody does the same
Across the homes, and it was found out not to be.
Some of this is the complexity of how Indiana, the state allows us to tax.
Right.
And, I can give a whole bunch of arguments as to why the process that we have for a lot of our property taxes, not just for the Conservancy District, but for everything,
Mhm.
is a little bit flawed, but
I-
unfortunately, those are the rules we work by.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other members? We will move on to the next agenda item.
And Michael, just FYI, I do have another commitment, so
Okay.
I'm gonna need to leave at 7.
Okay,
So if there's a need for me to be included in a vote or something, you might wanna
we've got
hurry that up, but
we've got a quorum,
anyway,
without,
Okay.
even a quorum here,
then
without you.
then carry on. Just
So
wanted you to know.
I appreciate that. So next item is approval of the August 22nd, 2024 board meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion for.
I will move to accept those minutes.
I second it,
Moved
and that's on the revised.
as amended.
That Adam sent out,
As
so I had
amended.
some comments on the
Yes.
first one.
Thank you for.
Yeah, those are raw minutes that needed in there.
Any further discussion on the amended minutes for August 22nd? Seeing none, and Mike, I will call you specifically just so that we have yours officially, but I'll do a general roll call or general vote here. All in favor, present, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Mike?
I was not there, I abstained.
Okay, thank you, Mike. So it is approved 501. Move on to treasurer's report, Debbie.
Okay, in your, board packets, I'll go over the balance sheet first. We have $104,000 in our cumulative conservancy fund. We have about $248,000 in our general checking account. We are down to a little under $250,000 in our construction account. And if you recall, that additional tax is always going into that construction account to pay those bills. And we have a little over $1 million in savings. So our checking and savings is $1,668,000. Total fixed assets recorded at cost are $2,004,000. Our liabilities are payroll withholding, and then of course our bonds payable. We've got a couple corrections that we've got to get the accountant to make, because if you look and you see the net income on the balance sheet, it's off $30,000 from the P&L, and that has to do with this payments on principal amounts and things that are capitalized that are handled differently in the account. So for the month of August, we had $22,715 in income. We had almost $14,000 in park admission. We were still having watercraft permits and some launch fees. So our total income was $22,000. We had $32,000 in expenses, so we had a net loss for the month of August of about $10,000. If you look at the comparison to budget, I just want to highlight a couple of things. We've got to get a little bit of a correction in some of these budgeted numbers, but it doesn't change things substantially. But what it does bring to light is that we budgeted $140,000 for watercraft permits, and we're about $6,000 under that. Our launch fees were about $4,500 under what we budgeted. That's not to say we won't have some people coming in September and, some additional opportunities, but with interest rates the way they are, we're doing very well on that. We only budgeted $250 and we have $21,500 in interest thus far. So that's a really good thing. as we talked about before, we way over budgeted our income for the eclipse event, and so that's down by about 49,000. But a good offset is that other income, which was some equipment sold during the year for 33 too. So I don't have any real trepidation about where we're gonna come out in terms of our budget to actual. And expenses, there really wasn't anything that was like substantially over or under budget. A few items like the disposal site prep is under budget about 18,000. I'm not sure if we'll make that up or not. So overall, year to date, we're at 189,611 in income. And then Adam's provided all the graphs, et cetera, there. And like I said, we'll get a couple of these corrections made. For example, she's got in the budget column, the cumulative conservancy expenses, we budgeted 50,000, but she doesn't have it in the income column, you know, so there's a couple little things that need to be straightened out. But they don't change anything substantially. Any questions or comments on the financials? Okay. If not, I will move on and ask for an approval of the August claims in the amount of 28,478.07. Couple things maybe to point out on there is we spent a little bit of money on the bathymetric study. We paid Levelland Electric to install security cameras. As we've talked about earlier, we had a small park event refund, canceled event. Other than that, our expenditures were really fairly low in the month of August, so.
So the canceled event was what, somebody had a down deposit or something and?
Yeah, it was, I think it was a wedding and then they followed the rules and canceled in time, I think.
Did they break up?
Did they load?
Together.
They did load, all right.
Did you change your
The
look?
parents were very unhappy that they were able to host the wedding.
So could I have a motion to approve the claims for August?
So
Thank you.
Second?
Seconding, okay, great.
I'll second it.
Looks like it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion on the claims? See none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mike?
I'm an aye. I do, when you said that and you moved forward, what was sold for 33,000?
That was the large excavator and the dozer.
Okay,
And
Thank
it's been a while, but yeah.
So all voted in favor, so motion carries. We move on to the wetland creation RFP engineering recommendation and award. Adam.
All right, so I'm gonna go through the recommendation from Christopher Burke. We did receive 2 bids on the wetland creation from Davy Resource Group and from Ecologic. The Davy Resource Group bid came in at $109,600. 2,000 for design, 50,000 for construction, and then essentially 50,000 for the maintenance and monitoring over 3 years. The Ecologic came in at $295,000. So they went through and looked at both of these bidders. Burke said that both bidders are considered responsible to the demonstration of professional qualifications, experience, descriptions, resumes, and project sheets. And then they further broke them out based on design and approach, the experience, quality of the maintenance and monitoring plan, cost of project, schedule of timeline, and then references. So the biggest difference between the two and the reason that there was such a cost difference was Davy Resource Group is installing 1,000 plugs, which are actual little plants that they would put out there, and then seeding the rest. Ecologic was actually proposing using upwards of 10,000 plugs and then seeding the rest. Based on their response, Davy Resource Group appears to meet the project requirements at the lowest cost. And then the biggest difference was that with Ecologic, it was a very designed, kind of enhanced wetland. So if you were gonna have an area with parks, boardwalks or something where you could actually have public out there, you'd result in kind of just like a much higher level of design in the wetland there. But then they stated that based on it just meeting the requirements, and cost, that Davy would be the recommendation. So the lowest cost and then meet the project requirements per permitting.
As I understood it, Davy met all the bid specifications, so they provided us exactly what we asked for. And Ecologic gave us extra, and that's reflected in their bid.
And then I think it's hard with justifying the use of public funds to go an extra $100.
Is there merit to the additional plugs that they were doing? I mean, like, if there was such a disparity in what one group thought was the appropriate way to do it, I mean, obviously, we can't jump up to that, but if there's real merit in doing that, can we potentially do more of that with the other bid? And
Yes, we could. Yeah,
if there's a reason to.
Yeah,
right?
you
It's just-
absolutely could go above and beyond.
If they felt that strongly to include in their bid,
Yeah,
I certainly don't know enough about this to.
yeah, you could definitely include plugs. I think Ecologic they really do designed scapes is what they do.
Landscape
And
architecture,
Davy
not just-
they're like, we're bidding for government, let's meet the requirements. Yes, we absolutely
So
could.
aesthetically, is it just gonna look a lot worse?
I don't think it'll
guess that's
look a
the
lot-
issue.
Take a while to fill in, probably, is what happens.
It'll likely take a little bit long. We'll probably need the full 3 years to meet the requirements, the mitigation requirements that.
And there's no reason you can't go put plugs in the next year too, right?
No.
We can always do that. So, but the specifications were created by Christopher Burke, correct?
Correct. Well, the specifications were created through our permitting,
Okay,
with IDEM and.
I see.
Yeah,
I mean, as long as we're meeting that,
Yeah,
I mean, we
Yeah.
don't need the Cadillac Cruiser.
so typically, because
But
it's,
we might want the Buick, like, we might want the Buick version
Oh.
instead of the Ford Escape.
this was a bid or RFP?
this was the RFP.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the RFP specifications, were there any criteria established beyond price and being responsive and responsible?
Just meeting the qualifications of the permitting.
So typically what would happen is if we identified very specific criteria by which we were going to review the proposals that come in, and one of them was that, aesthetics and we state that price isn't necessarily the giving factor, then that gives you more latitude to pick what you think is going to be the best. If you don't have that, based on my discussions with attorneys on similar things that we've done, then if you've met the specifications, state statute would suggest that you need, probably not suggest, would say that you should go
You have
with
to go
the
with that one.
lowest
Yeah,
responsive
I get
and
that.
responsible proposal, which in this case would be Davy.
Yeah, and with regards to success, I mean, you could do that project twice in that cost difference. So to your point, if
It's a
we want to
huge
add design
difference.
elements in future years, that's not out of the question. Sure.
It'll fill in, it'll just take 5 years to get where it would have been.
So the one that would take the boardwalk, we can't afford the boardwalk. The one that's not designed to have a boardwalk, we could actually afford to put the boardwalk in.
Correct.
So,
But we wouldn't want to because there's no room to support the people that would use it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. If there was like a pull-off area and
Right.
nature zones, but it's hard to justify that
Yeah,
level of cost.
the plugs will, I mean, because they're already plans as opposed to seed, obviously, they have a head start. So that's the advantage of going with that. But as I see it, as I was reviewing the documentation, I think the low proposal meets all the requirements and we would be on shaky ground not to go with that.
So is this just a discussion or is this something that? we
No, so
vote on?
I would recommend that we move forward with the RFP with the Davy Resource Group.
Okay, so you need a motion, a
That's
second.
correct.
Correct.
So moved.
I'll second,
Who
third,
wants,
whatever.
I think I heard Malcolm first, so
Yeah,
it's the
go ahead.
second. Any further discussion on the proposed motion to approve Davy and award a contract?
No, but I'm
Start.
guessing we checked references on their projects and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Christopher Burke reference, they did went through all the references and everything as well, so
When would they plant?
springtime.
Next year,
Next year, yeah,
25.
2025, correct.
To the
So
budget.
I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Mike?
Again, I'm an I, but I have questions. I'm
Sorry,
clicking on my mute. That's okay. So as I had a question in the summertime, you know, are we going to pay them in a 3-year period?
So for this one, the construction would be that $50,000, I guess 52,000, the design and construction. And then that monitoring would be for the 3 years after that. So 2025 is that 52,000, and then you would have 50,000, 57,000 split pretty evenly over the 3-year period after that. So 26, 27, 28.
So we're truly paying for the services that are rendered upfront, and then the monitoring is paid as they are doing the monitoring.
What do we do after 3 years?
If it's not a success, we have up to 5 years to have it be a success. Speaking
This
with the
is in my
consultant.
district. If people are not aware, District 7, this is in my district. I've been opposed to the pond filling in since the implementation of the SPC, but it's mute now. So believe me, people will be monitoring this. So that's why I'm asking questions. People talk about the board members don't talk to constituents. Well, I can tell you I do. And my phone rings off the hook most times since I have the largest district. So I will have concerns and questions, but I am an I, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. So motion carries.
So to that point, Mike, we have 5 years to ensure the wetland is a success. I do not feel there's gonna be any issues with that. I'm not sure if you've looked at like the upland basin at all. Having not touched that, essentially everything's vegetated, but not in the ratios of plants that they would like to see under permitting. So I do not foresee any issue with us having success out
And
there.
the state will actually come in and do the assessment. So they're the ones that tell us whether or not we met the requirements.
Okay, with that, I was told we could not go up and look at the upland site. Another freeholder told me that there was a drop off at the end of the road, so you couldn't even drive up there. So I don't know if any of that's true. I have not been up there. I was told we couldn't go up there. And that when you do drive up there, there's a large drop off. Is that correct?
We definitely have no trespassing signs, and we do not encourage people to go there. As a board member, if you'd like to go look at it, I'd love to take you up there.
When I went up, there
I'll
was.
I'll go look at it. So what about the drop off? Isn't there a drop off when you go at the end of that road?
Let's try to answer.
Yeah, I hit a pothole when I went up there, almost took my suspension out, but if you're careful, you can get through.
There's
Okay,
no
I don't
drop
think
off.
it. All right. Well, if there's a drop off, we should put a fence or something up there.
We've
I mean,
talked actually about putting Jersey barriers right at the base there, because we've had people driving up there and recreating, which we do not want to see.
okay. You got a
So-
date. Thank you.
So let's move on to managers report.
Is the next item the Sims talk?
It's the
We're gonna
managers
do
report.
the-
So the first item will be the sublease authorizations.
I'm actually going, if nobody minds, I'm gonna bump up that American Powerboat Association, and then we can do the dock and then dredging right into the budget.
That'd be good.
I'm
Does
fine.
that sound good? All right. Let me share this and I'll pass this over to Ross here.
So we've talked a little bit about this. This is something that really came about with the request for trying to find more events that could potentially be an income generation event at the park. So through that request from the board, I reached out to the Indiana Powerboat Association, which is a subchapter of the American Powerboat Association, to just see if they would be interested in holding a race at Lake Lemon. So if they did hold a race, this is basically where the race course would be. It would be marked by buoys. They would have their pits on the beach at the lake. And this is kind of where as far as the lake is concerned, the space would be taken up. So the weekend that they would run this, we're looking at early May. There would be that weekend where parts of the lake were non-usable for recreation, but there would still be a large amount of the lake that people would be able to, go boating on should they choose to. So I don't want, first of all, to think that we were trying to shut down the entire lake for a weekend if we were to do this. Kind of the expectations and responsibilities, obviously, if they were gonna come and do this, we expect them to pay the on-lake special event fee like anybody else who would come and do a special event. The rowing team, when they do their regatta, pays this event fee. They are looking at early May, I think the 10th and 11th would possibly be the weekend that they're hoping to do this at. They would race Saturday and Sunday, and the races would run from about 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. They would ask that they would be able to camp at the lake when they do that. Just, as it's a weekend event. And then the Indiana Powerboat Association would coordinate all the racing aspects. We would not have any responsibilities as far as like timing or, trophies or anything. That's all stuff that they would do. And they would also work with the local EMS to provide emergency services. Obviously, with boat racing, they need to have emergency services on hand if something were to go wrong. They would provide that service, so that we would not be on the hook for anything like that. So really, what we would be expected to provide, aside from, the use of the park with this, would be, we would have the ability to sell tickets to people if they wanted to come to this event and spectate. We would also be able to have food trucks come out, so even just on the amount of people racing, I think there would be maybe a draw for food trucks. If we had spectators, that's even more so. We get, a small vendor fee from the food trucks. And then the biggest ask would that we would have some volunteers who would be willing to be out on pontoon boats just to make sure that boat traffic, stays clear of the area while the racing is happening. So I have reached out to 4 other lakes that have these events. And what I've kind of found is that they fall into like basically 2 main categories. You have the lakes that they attend that are either like residential lakes or like a lake or river or a flowage, as they call them in Wisconsin, that there's not really very many houses on. There's no host association. They go there, they either, pay the lake for the rights to do it or the lake allows them to. They don't really advertise it much, and the racers themselves do it as like a hobby. And then you have the lakes like Danville, Lake Vermilion and Danville, Illinois. It is a large fundraiser for it's called the GAO Grotto. I think it's kind of like an Elks Club type facility. That is their like big event for the year. They've been doing it for many years and, continue to do it and have, hundreds and thousands of people come over the weekend to attend these. The GAO Grotto in Danville, they do have like a restaurant on site, like an Elks or like a Legion type thing. So they, they don't even charge for admission, but they do make money off of like food and like carnival games and stuff like that. Constantine, Michigan, has races that are hosted by the American Legion. They do a racing school on Friday, so people who are like interested in getting into this, you can like rent a boat and they take you out and teach you how to drive them. They did say that it's gotten less popular like since the early 2000s, but they still have a couple hundred people attend. Rock Falls, Illinois, and then there was a lake in Wisconsin that I just in the past few days talked with that said kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. They were like, they come and race. We don't really have much to do with it. Some people come and, it is what it is. So I guess the big like pros and cons is that it is loud. I mean, that's what they've all said, that it's loud, especially with the first year of doing this, just not to overpromise anything. Like this is not obviously a NASCAR race that's gonna attract hundreds of thousands of people. These are kind of the boats that you would see on a lake like ours.
What kind of horsepower does each of those have, do you think? like when you talk?
I mean, not a whole lot, I don't think it's really the horsepower, I think it's high torque
Oh, okay.
and
All design.
hull design. Yeah, I mean, they're lifting the boat mostly out of the water, because it's one person and, as you can see, a very small boat, so there's not a lot of resistance. I mean, they can reach speed 60 to 80, but I don't think the horsepower is
Well, I was
necessarily
just
the-
thinking about wakeboards and that kind of thing, and is this gonna stir up a bunch of stuff?
No, it's not like
No, it's
that's
kind
a
of
huge,
gliding.
wake
Mhm.
producing
Hmm.
events. And this is just something that I saw that we could have it outside of the recreation season. It's something that we could, and we're not signing a contract and committing to like years of doing this. If we wanted to try it, we could try it. If we don't, we don't
But
have
if all we're
to.
gonna do is get $1,700 out of them, maybe, something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's a potential, kind of like the car show, to kind
Yeah.
of start like selling tickets and everything. To have people camping out there, these people camping there for the weekend, what's our cost gonna be? We're gonna have some cost involved.
Yeah, we would have staff,
Yeah.
extra staff on those days, yeah.
Are they paying to camp?
I mean, we could talk with them about that. I mean, that's another
That
thing,
might
like,
be the thing.
when I talked with them, they said typically we don't, shell out, like, when I was like, if we really did, if you did the what is it, the special events fee for 2 days and the whole on lake fee for like every single day, and it was like $5,500, like, we would not, come to an event that was that expensive.
I think the biggest potential is if we can sell that as an event.
Yeah.
And have
Have
people-
other stuff
have
going
people
on and
come,
people
yeah.
come out as a ticketed event.
And that's really the unknown, and when I talked with people, I guess what I saw was the established races get pretty good attendance, but if it's, the first year, it's really,
Is the choice between 2 days, 2 full days or nothing?
I believe so, yeah, I think they wanna race every class in their association on an event. But I could certainly reach out to them and,
Is IU graduation that weekend? That's a Mother's Day weekend is my guess. I'm just thinking about the dates in my head.
I,
10 and 11.
But we can send out a constant contact survey too on the lake too, and if it comes back
That sounds.
overwhelmingly one or the other. I mean,
What do you mean if it comes?
like if we send out and everybody on the lake is like, we don't want that.
Is it louder than a dredger?
well, I don't know, I mean, and that's the thing, like, the East End has listened to noise for 3 years, it's a weekend.
Now you wanna take it down to our end.
That's right. I go to races down on the river. It's
Yeah.
loud.
Debbie, Mother's Day is May 11th.
Is it? Okay.
I know that the last couple of weekends, there's been
Graduation,
someone
is that-
that has a really loud boat.
Yes, we've been aware of that.
And, I
One loud.
really loud,
Yeah.
but now I got humor when it broke down, but that's good. I mean, the volume of noise and is something that is a little bit concerning to me.
Yeah,
Is there potential for lost revenue? Are fishermen gonna be able to launch that weekend?
fishermen we wouldn't have a fishing tournament that week, so that's, what is it, next year, $110? For the fishing tournament, and then let's say every single boat is a day league, which is typically not the case, but then you would have 25 boats at $22.
Okay.
So that could potentially, yes, be the max lost revenue, and then I guess if we did, I don't foresee, like, for this next year, us, renting grandstands and having a huge, until we would know, so I don't think that we would, on the planning side, have a lot of money. And that's really what kind of, when I was looking at different things, I thought maybe this could be a potential, because it does seem like it's a low cost event that we could try, and if it does well, maybe it could be something that could make money, and if not.
I'd say do
I've
the
sort of
constant
got that
contact.
attitude too.
Ask people what they think. Tell them it's loud. but
Yeah,
you
we'll send
need-
out a survey.
I do have it right on my calendar, because, well, the 6th, didn't, is that May 6th?
All right, next up, we'll have the sublease authorizations. These first two are for Tyler Polston and Robert Steele. Both are residents of District 6. And this area really is unfortunately the closest sublease where we do have a couple locations available for sublease. I have gone down and met with Debbie in these areas, and then actually Robert met with Ross the other day to look at that area.
Oh, you did look at it?
Yeah.
So along with the process that we have for non-priority one, we do non-adjacent subleases. We meet with the folks, meet with the rep, and then if there's not an issue, we'd have the rep recommend a motion to approve those subleases. That being said, after these two subleases, there's really no room for subleases in that area that require any type of parking.
That Polston one is gonna need clearing to get it in there. And that's partly why we're kind of looking at all that whole area and went down both of those roads and walked it, so.
Is there roads going down in there?
There is.
They're not like asphalt roads or anything,
Yeah.
but.
There's a dirt road that
There's
comes down and goes
truck tire.
along these docks.
Okay, so it's accessible.
So it's off street parking.
I mean, if you're fine with it, I was fine with it.
Yeah. So that's the case.
So
A
do you
requested
need me to
motion.
make?
Yes, please.
I move that we approve the sublease in District 2 for, what's your first name? Robert Steele. Robert Steele
And Tyler
And
Polston.
Tyler Polston.
and Tyler Polston.
And I would like to second that since they're in
Yeah,
my
since
district.
they're here.
So we have a motion and a second for the sublease approvals for Mr. Steele and Mr. Polston. Is there any discussion on this?
No,
I'm sorry, Mike,
He said no.
you said no?
Said no discussion.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Mike, how do you
Aye.
vote? Voted unanimously. The motion carries. We also have a short causeway sublease approval
Yes.
for the Heinz.
So this is for Sarah and Brandon Hines. They are actually residents in District 3. But they're they're kind of just to the west of the causeway. Longtime residents and they're looking for a dock on the short causeway. I've met there with Les and the owners and I don't really see any issues there and
Yeah, it's a okay place and, if they wanna make a little pullout for a golf cart, there's, opportunity to do that and they're okay with that. They don't really need or want a car spot or anything. So there'd be minimal change there and there's a decent spot to put a dock in, so.
For a what?
A dock.
A dock, yeah. So I would make that motion that we approve the Heinz dock.
Just a comment, if they're planning on doing the golf cart, one of the conservation officers is, he likes to go after people on the road. I mean, it seems so, yeah. Yeah, one of the guys that's been around and, it's just, it seems silly, but
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think the
think so.
law
There have been
is,
so many people that have gotten killed in golf carts that are on roads. They're for golf courses.
well, and I think the rule is if you're gonna have it on the road, it's gotta be street legal. You need
it has to be
license
licensed.
plates, lights and turn signals and all that, and everybody has that.
The biggest thing is it needs to be licensed. I mean, one of the people in my neighborhood got pulled over on his UTV and he got it from a farmer that it was licensed and the officer just ran him through the paces but it came out he was legal, but he was really wanted to do what he could with them and he couldn't. So it's not even about, I think people think that if you have the seatbelts and the turn signals and whatever, but you have to have a license plate and they won't give it to you in Monroe County, so.
So don't tell them to count on a golf cart.
Oh,
yeah.
Carrying their
Yeah,
And I've seen
paraphernalia.
more on that, right there, I've just seen a lot more activity, police officers and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
for a couple of years, I hadn't seen anybody in the last 6 months.
Well, I mean, that's a consideration. I mean, but there's nowhere to park, so.
You can't park on that grassy area in the
Yeah,
corner.
they could walk.
that's really it.
that's-
I don't
Yeah,
care, I don't care what they do, I'm just saying that.
Yeah, the golf
that they-
cart.
Don't count on driving your golf cart.
I'm just saying, right, that's
So did I
fine.
hear a motion?
I did motion that. Yes,
Do I
did.
have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Can I just look?
Excuse me?
The conservation officer stopped a friend of mine and said no ATVs, but he let golf carts in our area.
Huh?
There's that, and these people live to the west, near the causeway?
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Mike, how do you vote?
I'm an aye.
Okay, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, have a good meeting.
And then we move on to resolution 09-2402 Eastern Causeway dock placement. And that's,
Right, so on this one, we have been, Teresa Sims was at the last meeting. They are a home on the eastern side of the long causeway where we did fill in the pond there and creating the wetland. She had reached out to Mike and myself about putting a dock on the long causeway. Since we haven't had one any before, and it wasn't something that we can give direct authorization over, I had her reach out to the Monroe County Highway Department. The Monroe County Highway Department did come back and actually give permission. I'm gonna see if I can't pull up. The Highway Department letter did give permission to place a dock at the causeway there. Stop share.
We believe you.
Yeah. So we do have a resolution that's associated with this. The highway department said per their conversation, they don't have any issues with installation of the boat dock. As long as it interferes with right of way of the road or maintenance. Furthermore, no drive or pull off access would be permitted along that area. And then really this is authorizing for installation of a boat dock. And being as we are not in control of that area, I've made that explicit in our resolution, stating that this dock is associated with that parcel number. So if they were to sell that property, it is for sale now, that dock would be associated with that parcel.
So it is for sale.
Yes, it is, yeah, so this is one allocation, we're not opening up
Right.
to more there than any potential docks that would have to go through that process with the highway department. So per the letter on the Monroe County Highway Department, we created resolution 09-2402. This also has stipulations in there since we do have issues with debris in that area, that the dock must be removable and need to be removed no later than December 1st, then installed or reinstalled no earlier than May 15th to allow us to get the debris done that we do every year in that area. So kind of a few stipulations on there. Are there any questions or?
any questions, Mike? I know this is your area, so I want to make sure.
No, again, Teresa called me 2 days ago. Her husband, Steve, had a heart attack. He went through quadruple bypass surgery yesterday. I hope he's okay. I haven't heard from her, but I certainly support this resolution.
Thank you, Mike.
You want to make a motion, Mike?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Malcolm has second. Any further discussion on the proposed resolution? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Mike, how do you vote?
I'm an aye.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then the last thing, really just the dredging update for this year. We had the barge, we're done. Whew, I'm thankful it's off the water. It's been a lot this year. The barge did come off the water on the 18th, so I guess just earlier this week. They got the barge removed. They did it at Burl Point Park. You can see the photos here of their actual hydraulic barge. They utilized two big wreckers to actually drag that thing up onto the bank, then the shoreline, and then brought in cranes. I was happy to see that even on a brand new barge, the condition of the exterior, erosion sediment is not easy on these barges. So we did get that removed out. Now there's some other pictures of the crane that they have to bring in to lift this barge. Just this piece of machine alone is, I think, 5 semis just for the barge itself, between the pontoons, ladders, base, everything just to move that, and then an additional 5 or 6 semis of piping to get all this, so.
Boats and
Yeah, and 3 boats,
tankers.
yeah, swamp buggies, so I know we've talked about before, like. This was discussion about how could potentially be an easy operation, it is very involved dealing with this equipment at this level. And the cost, and I wanna say, that barge itself was close to $2 million, that it built brand new this year. And then all the piping, but it was very effective, they were averaging between 1,200 and 1,500 yards of material a day being removed. Which is awesome. They were barely, you could tell their spuds were barely moving. These things are able to cut, I believe, like 40 feet deep in channels. So we really weren't even kind of scratching the surface on what they're capable of. I do have some pictures here. This was taken on that same day on the 18th. This is the overflow pond. One thing that we did not have to worry about was not maximizing the capacity. I know with the permitting to be in a one-time shot thing, one of our biggest goals is let's get as much in there as we can to utilize it. So this large photo is actually from the west facing east, and you can see the sediment layers that will compact a little bit. But with the water being down right now, at least a foot, if not a little bit more, it really exposed all that sediment that was in there, which was a very good visual confirmation that we accomplished maximizing this capacity. And then these pictures on the left are from the east facing west. You can see some water here. That's just a couple inches deep, if that, and really that sediment's kind of holding that water back. And then in the bottom left photo here, you can actually see some vegetation that's already starting to shoot up there, primarily creeping water, primrose, but just kind of goes to show that that sediment is incredibly nutritious and we should not have any issue with vegetation growing in there. If you have driven by, there has been kind of like a green film on it that is not blue-green algae, that is actually a prokaryote named Euglena. It's kind of a mixture of an animal and a plant. Being with all the nutrients that kind of got stirred up and then placed there, it's like perfect habitat for microbiomes. So that is all in place. They will be fixing the silt curtains and we'll be leaving those there over the winter time to deal with kind of any rains while that sediment kind of stabilizes. And then they are planning on getting out their swamp buggy, I believe, Monday, which is that big excavator that's there.
So any fish or anything living probably came through to the lake then?
Yeah, I think a good portion of them. I think the ones that didn't make it died off at the same rate as the gulls and herons and eagles preferred. We never, I'm sure there was some loss.
Yeah.
But we did have, during the initial portion of it, we kept that pipe open, so there was a conduit to get through. But going as a wetland, I mean, there was gonna be some impacts there, but I don't think there's any detriment to the lakeside fishery at all. So this mapping is actually showing the elevation change, so the amount of sediment that was removed. These areas, the colored areas, are what we actually got to this year, and then you can see the bathymetric from their surveys. So anywhere that we didn't get to was 5 feet plus already at normal pool. The first area that they started off with was the peninsula on the north side of Bean Blossom Creek. You can see here they're taking between 6 and 7 feet of material, and we can know that because that was actual land that was vegetated. And then on average, you have, I would say, between 3 to 4 feet, almost 3 to 4 feet of sediment that was actually being removed in those areas. I kind of overlaid this. This area was the areas that we took out in 2022 and 2023, just to kind of show what we have gotten done through this first hydraulic dredging campaign that we have done. So some overall stats in 2024, they did remove approximately, I think, just over 137,000 yards of material. The contract was for 125. They wanted to make sure they at least got that. I suspect they may request payment for a little bit of that. We're not obligated. We're really only obligated for that initial 125,000 yards. That being said, they were good to work with and we want to negotiate on that. We're gonna get some free yardage out. We're not gonna have an unexpected $70,000 bill for the overshot, but we'll see what they propose as potential payments. And that's
Do you have any
after.
discussion with them about it already?
Yeah, just a little bit. Like I said, we can't even talk about anything until our engineers review the bathymetrics. So that 137,000 yards was the numbers from Dredge America.
Yeah.
All of that data has been sent to Christopher Burke to be verified. So I have all that data now. So before we even talk about any change orders or anything like that, that will have to be verified and have numbers coming back from the engineers. on
Right,
that. So-
because those periodic payments to them always had a qualifier on them
Correct.
because we had to wait for, a lot of final information.
Yeah, correct. And then all of those payments did have a 10% withholdings too.
Retainage.
Retainage, so to make sure so all that has been sent off to the engineers and then we'll get that verification. As soon as I get that, I think the engineer's on vacation for the rest of the month, so by the next meeting, we'll have their numbers and recommendations.
They're on vacation for the rest of the month, is that what you said?
Yeah, which is only a couple of days.
Couple of days.
Yeah.
But you haven't mentioned this formally in a board meeting, but they had turnover. The main person that we used to work with at Christopher Burke
They
is
did.
no longer there.
Correct.
And you weren't loving that transition.
Yeah, I think initially the transition, the engineer that we worked with did leave the company, so right now we actually have their the head of the project division. So he may have some going on, but yeah, we have gotten information as well about where our engineer went to, so as we're looking at costs for analysis and stuff in the future, it'd be something to look at, because we did like working with them. And
Quicker turnaround.
what was that?
You have a quicker turnaround.
Definitely. So 137,000 yards moved in 2024 and 2022 and 2024 total, we removed 272,000, almost 750 yards for this 3-year project. So over 250,000 yards of material had been removed and approximately 80 acres have been reclaimed with that area for the areas that we actually dredged at. I mean, that is a huge area and a huge amount of yardage. To date, since we started the sediment removal program in 2006, about 420,000 yards of material had been removed. So 65% of the material that's been removed since the formation of these projects going on has been in the past 3 years. I think, which is huge to show that we finally are starting to understand the scope of the problem and then also starting to address the problem. I think for a long time there was no studies, not much bathymetric, and then we were kind of happily, digging the channels and the sand without really looking beyond that. I think once we started getting into the studies and realizing the scope of the issue, we have adapted very well and have actually accomplished quite a bit in the past.
So you're talking about the dredging operations that we did ourselves.
Correct, yeah.
Before we transitioned to this.
Yeah, to hydraulic. I mean, so we doubled that removal from 2006 to 2020. Took out twice that amount of sediment in 3 years with this hydraulic project.
Were you able to do anything off Ellis Point, or what happened after the project?
Yeah, they actually did. They got in there and I believe that 3 days of dredging.
So not everything they wanted, but.
Not everything they wanted. We had to call that quits because we were out of capacity in that overflow pond. So once the water quality, we can't just push stuff out there. So they were able to get some private dredging done in them.
And the 137 does not include any of the private.
Correct. I mean, so overall, it's huge what we've been able to accomplish, and it took a long time, I mean, between the planning and permitting. So along that, I kind of came up, we're always talking about the plan and the funds and how we need to afford this. In the budget, we do have $425,000, and that is what has been earmarked for these construction operations, dredging operations, and that does go into our construction account. We actually, just on the last payment, we had to shift money from our general funds to the construction account, because I think the last bill was a little over $250,000 for the last bill. So this is actually looking at, we always talk about kind of the 5-year plan of raising money and then doing projects. This is looking at moving forward in 2025, kind of with the assumption of starting 2025 at a $0 sum, not even looking at what we've taken out of our reserves to cover the cost this year. So starting in 2025, we will be planting the 17-acre mitigation wetland and then doing a full bathymetric. That way we can plug that data into our sediment surveys, see how well sediment's being captured, how much is coming in. We can update the amount of annual sediment loading since 2019, when our last bathymetric was done, and the more data we have, the more we can fine tune that. In 2026 and in 2025 also, we'll begin exploring the sediment disposal from the upland site or potentially secondary site designs. In 2027 would be sediment removal from the upland site or secondary site creation. And these will kind of, be running simultaneously. It's not necessarily one or the other exclusively. In 2027 though, we do have the approximated cost of removing 100,000 yards of sediment from our upland created site. And that's about $750,000 if we were to use one of the Roger Group's quarries to truck sediment from that upland site. So to get that site back to a level where we could do a 100,000 yard project again, you're at $750,000 with trucking. Now, the goal would be to drive that cost down. There's not a whole lot of land by us, so we're trying to get crafty, and that's gonna be over the next, few years, trying to come up with plans to reduce that cost, who we can work with, if we can find land, our other farmers. We'll be exploring all options. In 2028, again, raising funds for the project or potential dredging. And then that brings us then to 2028 to about $840,000 and an open $840,000 and an open usable site if we truck that sediment out there. And then in 2029, at the end of the year, we essentially have about $1.2 million.
And whether
Of
that would be
funds.
identified. I was very, this is
Yeah.
for discussion purposes.
Just very
only.
discussion purposes.
Big estimates, but this is kind of what we're thinking, the only way to mow the grass, so to speak, keep the ongoing operations
This
going.
makes
Unless
sense.
new information comes to us, this is what we're working under these assumptions.
Yeah, you're looking at essentially push the realm of $1 million to clear out a site, the realm of $1 million to do a project of these size. At this current taxation threshold would allow us to essentially clear out a site and do a project within a 4 to 5 year cycle.
That's why we were so fortunate to be able to use that overflow pond, because it cost us almost $500,000 to build
To create that,
And now
yes.
it's gonna cost us almost twice that to clear it out and use it again.
Well,
I
we
think
need to be looking at
Tina's-
other things
To
like,
Tina's point, though, I think that's that's where we
Seems
try
like
to
it's
find
the
opportunity.
we could put another pump in the line and move it somewhere else and, so we gotta be thinking of those things too. But I have a question for you, what was it? Is there any place at the west end of the lake that needs to be dredged, like near the spillway?
So I think we'll start to see some of that with our full lake bathymetric next year. We haven't had any updated surveys in those areas since 2019. So it'll be interesting to see where some of the other small creeks are coming in, where Icebox Cove's coming in. Even in Debbie, there's small creeks that are coming down in there.
Oh God,
So
that
we'll have to-
washes down right next to it.
Yeah, so that'll be a full assessment.
Without obviously scientific things, but it would seem like, especially between Cemetery Island and immediately west of that area, which is where Icebox Cove and then
Yeah.
the other creek
Yeah,
that's
there's
coming
gotta
up
be
from the
something
side.
dumping something in
It's
there.
dumping some stuff there, so it feels like that we're losing some capacity there.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the water's been relatively low for a good portion of the summer, so that's contributing towards it as well, but I do think that there's probably some other areas, but the bathymetric will give us more.
Well, some that are worse than others, but I was thinking about it when Tina was just kind of talking about, you know, the east end of the lake versus the west end, but all of our studies have shown it's slithering down, you know, the east end's.
It is,
getting
yeah.
closer, but we're losing depth.
And on
Clearly.
that sediment transport study, and kind of back to Malcolm's mention earlier, is the sediment is very fine, so, you know, we have maybe a third of that sediment settling out
Yep.
east of Eidolon, maybe a little bit less, but the rest of the lake is receiving sediment as well. And I think in that sediment transport study, they're averaging like a ½ inch of depth loss per year uniform around the lake, which you don't notice if you have 8 feet off your dock, but once you're getting down to a couple of feet, you start to notice that a lot more. So, I mean, the dredging will look at full lake.
And when's the bathymetric?
We'll be doing the full one next year.
Sometime in the summer. is that
Yeah,
what you're saying?
by springtime and get it.
Yeah, be good.
All right, that's the end of the manager.
So is that helpful at all, just to
That's
kind of
great.
lay it
This is
out like that?
Exactly what I want to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions?
I have a question if I may. So
Absolutely.
are we talking about a special benefits tax for the next 5 years?
Maybe,
I mean, there's a special benefits tax every year, but yes, that is assuming we keep the tax rate current. Well, not the rate, the ask, so the rate will drive down, but the asked amount the same.
just laying it out there, Mike, I think the intention was just to look at what the overall cost would be from what we know today. And we will have to keep the tax at the same level to be able to fund a future project, because we've still got our bonds that we're paying off for the next 20 years too. We can't borrow our way out of this, so maybe we'll find some grants and maybe something else will open up, but that's kind of what we're looking at as an ongoing. It's-
Do you remember, Treasurer, you said, are you gonna tax me to death? I do. I remember you saying those words. Anyway, you know, if we're going to continue to do a special benefits tax, exempt property can be taxed in a special benefits tax. I think we should probably have our lawyer look at that, because if someone goes to the State Board of Accounts or the Department of Local Government Finance and talks about this special benefits tax, City of Bloomington, Boys and Girls Club, IU, Bloomington Yacht Club, those exempt properties could be assessed a tax during the special benefits tax.
Good.
I'll have to look into that. I currently know IU does not pay tax, essentially since they're a state property. They're similar to the Conservancy District where they are tax exempt, but I will look into that, Mike. I believe the yacht club, I don't think they would be exempt even as a non-for-profit, because we actually had Sycamore Land Trust contact us recently after a reassessment on their property in Monroe County. And we went and spoke with the assessor's office, and the assessor said that even Sycamore Land Trust as a 501c3 did not exempt them. But I will look into that, because we do want to make sure that
Yeah,
we're
you have to
capturing
apply
from
for
our
that
biggest net as
tax
possible.
exemption. You would have to apply.
What do you think City of Bloomington will say if we start implementing a special tax on their property at the lake?
On their property?
That could be a delicate conversation.
And I think it's Indiana Code 143310-1. And officially, in the official opinion from the special benefits tax levy, it was the official opinion number 57-1967 of the Attorney General's office. So it goes beyond assessors and State Board of Accounts and DLGFs. So that's probably why we need to have Angela probably take a look at it.
Go ahead, shoot me an email, with some of the information, I'll look into that.
Okay.
We
Thank
couldn't
you.
write down the numbers that quick,
Okay.
but
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any other items on the manager's report?
No.
This will move us to the public hearing for the 2025 proposed budget. I will have Adam and Debbie provide some additional information regarding it, and then in compliance with state statute, we will have a public hearing that will open up. Public will have an opportunity to make comments for or against, and then we'll close the public hearing. So.
All right, we've had the discussion the past kind of month or two on our line item discussions. What you're seeing now is the actual notice to taxpayers that is through Gateway and the Department of Local Government Finance. This is showing our budget estimates, which would be the expenditures between our general fund and the cumulative conservancy improvement fund. General fund expenditures at $932,846. Cumulative conservancy improvement at $143,500. Again, that was some of the work we were looking at. If we don't use it, we do not lose it, it stays in the accounts. The total expenditures, $1,076,346. For the estimated funds to be raised, this is our tax appeal. The general fund is the special benefits tax. That's at $850,000. $425,000 of that is earmarked for our construction accounts for the dredging operations and sustainability of Lake Lemon. And then $62,800 is the cumulative conservancy improvement portion of that tax. That is a set rate of, I think, 0.033% per $100 of assessed value. So that only changes with the assessed values of properties in the conservancy. That rate itself does not change. So the current tax levy, there's no change from the current tax levy going into 2025 compared to 2024. And then actually through our discussions with Department of Local Government Finance, we're anticipating the tax rate will be reduced by as much as 10% compared to this year, next year, because the assessed values have gone up so much. Monroe County, I think they estimated 17% increase in assessed value. And then I know Brown County has recently started assessing and reassessing theirs as well. A couple of properties I've gotten notified on have been increased by 20 to 30% in assessments. When your property value goes up 20 to 30%, that extra money goes to the county. We do not get any more than that. We have a set value that we ask for. Just kind of want to clear. Set dollar amount that we ask for. So I want to clarify that. So if your taxes go up this next year, that extra goes to the county and not to us.
The question is, what does the county do? The county taxes are extremely high. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. And you can see when if you go to the GIS platforms, Monroe or Brown County, when you look at your assessments and tax levels, there's one that says special benefits other or spring and fall other, and that is a combination of your stormwater fees and the conservancy, and then the other bulk of the taxes is from county schools, et cetera.
Debbie, any other items you want to add before we open the public hearing?
I don't think so. We haven't changed anything. We presented it a couple of months in a row, unless anybody has any.
Any items from the board before I open the public hearing? I will open the public hearing at 7:32 p.m. Any members of the public wishing to speak either in favor or against the proposed budget?
Oh, that's what I did earlier.
We heard you, so.
Yeah, thank you.
So it is 7:33 p.m., so I will close the public hearing. That will take us on to our next item, new business correspondence for future agenda. Our next meeting is Thursday, October 24th, 2024, which is our board meeting, and it will also be the meeting at which we consider and adopt the 2025 proposed budget. With that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I have one thing that I thought maybe Adam can clarify that we
Sure.
chatted about right before.
Absolutely.
And that's our feeling on the lake drawdown,
Okay.
just so people aren't planning for it and.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so we have had the discussion back and forth. We have been contacted by a few residents around the lake requesting a drawdown. We have not heard an overarching request from lots of freeholders on the drawdown. Speaking with the engineers, they really can't give any definitive answers one way or another. They say if we do a big drawdown, there's the potential of increased erosion. If you don't do a drawdown, you have the potential of ice damage. And so really, it's if we decide to do that, I think there is probably more of a net negative as far as sediment removal or movement with a drawdown. So I think it was.
I guess we're kind of thinking we shouldn't do it because it could negatively impact all the money that we just spent on sediment
Understand that,
removal.
but I think we ought to have a regular schedule, you know, so that people will know every 5 years or every, whatever it is,
Yeah.
that we do it.
When's the last time we did it? It's been only been a couple of years
2020?
ago.
It's not been since I've been here, so at least
Really?
2020.
I think it was 2020. That's
We tried one. And it rained.
Unsuccessfully.
Correct, yeah, we did try one, I guess the year before we started hydraulic dredging, so maybe 21.
When was the railroad kerfuffle stuff?
Oh, yeah,
That was about 7 years ago.
Yeah, so that was in the
'Cause it was about
summertime.
when I
You're
first
calling
came
me
on.
old?
So the last time we tried a winter drawdown, the lake came up about a foot.
Right.
So we generally wouldn't start it until after Thanksgiving when we remove our public docks. And then you can only draw,
They were almost done.
and then we can really only get a drawdown if the creeks aren't flowing, if there's no rain. So even when we try, it's a crapshoot, and the last time it was unsuccessful with the amount of rain that we got in November and December.
Well, I just wanted to clarify that since it had come up in a couple of meetings.
I mean, so we're kind of already sending out that poll for interest in the race. I mean, I guess when you say that a few people have contacted you, then, and we're kind of, if the needle's kind of in the middle, but it's leaning towards not a great idea, if it's only a few people, I would let go that way, but I don't know what the appetite really is. In my personal district, I don't have people bringing it up to me, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's representative of the whole lake, so I guess I'd be curious what.
I've been asking for the last couple of years for a drawdown, just to investigate what's at the marina. You know, and along the docks, cause there's a long history of steel and all kinds of stuff there, and we'd like to see what we got.
Well, I guess I'll say, I don't really want to ask everybody what they want to do because we've already spent in excess of $2 million plus and we can't. And what we started out saying was that we would ask the engineers if it was going to be harmful and they're not giving us an answer. So personally, I'd like to not ask everybody and put it off a year because I don't think it's a prudent management decision to make. And I talked to our neighbors about it and they're like, well, if you draw down, yeah, I'll probably just get in and do a little bit more excavating, but he didn't seem to care. I mean.
I haven't heard anything this year. I do have a couple constituents that typically like it, but I haven't heard from them this year. Other ones are sort of, if you do it, fine. If you don't, fine. It's generally the consensus I have. I think that it is prudent that if we're going to do a bathymetric study, that it makes sense to do the bathymetric study without, let's keep things constant before we do that. And then that allows us, again, maybe another data point to make an informed decision.
And if we
Well,
did
that's right. I
decide,
didn't think about that. That
and
would
if we
really
did
throw
decide to
it
make a
off.
drawdown next year, we would know where we were following that and what
Correct.
implications
Yeah.
to doing that. Yeah.
Under natural.
We can do it every 5 years on the 5-year mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I could say one more thing, how we put the wear system in after all of our dredging last year is maybe to look at some areas, whether it's Icebox Cove or some areas that are filling in. When you do the drawdown, that might be the ideal time to do that same kind of effort in those locations to stop some of the.
Did you ever, not to prolong this meeting, but did you ever get Monroe County happy with letting us go on with our operations?
No, we've
That's been
got a
big
meeting in
issue.
2 weeks.
And I
We've got a
think
meeting
they were
coming
giving you a
on.
hard time, yeah.
We have a meeting coming on with the sewer stormwater floodplain managers.
The state.
The
Folks
state,
are coming down to do a
yeah.
tour of the lake. So we've got meetings set up with pretty much all the stakeholders in the next month.
I think the ultimate goal, I believe Monroe County is gonna want us to be on the hook to prove that our operations are not negatively impacting potential flood ramifications.
Yeah,
That being said, the goal is to make this as smooth as possible. So if we're gonna do a dredging project, or say we have a contractor come out for private dredging, let's get all this under one permit. Let's streamline it. And then also after coming like October, November, once they finalize these ordinances, all new docks have to be approved by the county floodplain manager. So we have started working with them which I think it'll be nice to actually utilize their permitting system. Because it's very clean, but they would have to sign off on it, we'll have to sign off on it. And then it does kind of put an area too where it goes through the checks and processes. There's another set of eyes on it, but really from the state level and from FEMA, any new construction or anything inside the floodplain will have to be approved by the county floodplain manager.
and we're all part of the floodplain.
Yes.
Well,
So we'll be navigating that as we go forward.
So if I'm gonna do a pole barn, I need to do it like right now.
Any other comments from board members before we seek a motion for adjournment? All right, now entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
So seconded.
Moved and second, barring any objection, we stand adjourned.
Extended capacity.
I have a question.